Okay, we are live, we are live, we are live. That makes me feel good on this Saturday night. Although the star of the show, that would be Jason, won't be here tonight. He says he might try to check in, but family takes priority. So we should expect Jason will try to check in, but don't count on it. So maybe Eric, maybe DJ Ricky, we'll see. But in the meantime, oh my goodness, where do I want to start? Yes, well, I put up Connecticut real estate, affordability, doo-wah, and wow, the future, man, oh man. So, um, the maybe if Eric weighs in on this, we can continue this discussion. We had a rather heated exchange last night. I am guilty as accused, but he was saying some things that may not have been quite accurate. Just saying, just saying. So I wanted to share a few things with the audience. Now, I don't know how interested the audience is in Connecticut real estate. I mean, just to put it in perspective, the population of Connecticut at what 3.5 million, roughly 3.6, maybe 3.7, is roughly 1% of the population of America. All right, so that's kind of it. Getting a good measure on the economy is a little bit difficult because when you have a state as small as Connecticut, the presence of two major defense contractors, Sikorsky and Electric Boat, can produce outsized impacts on the economy. Case in point was the recent announcement by the DoD that they're going to be awarding the Electric Boat something like, I got to check what we're going to put on the low end. The low end is 72 billion. It can be as high as 92 billion to build more submarines at the rate of about one submarine a year between now and the 2030s. Yeah. So they're talking about 16 boats. So that'd have to be at a higher rate than one a year, just saying. And this is in spite of the fact that we've had reports. That's right. We've had reports saying that they have cost overruns, they have manufacturing delays, they have all kinds of operational problems as they struggle to get these submarines out. Now, it's fair to ask, well, how are our competitors doing? The primary ones, of course, being China and Russia. Russia has a lot of experience in building submarines. So I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say that their manufacturing standards are probably comparable to ours. They are just as concerned with making sure that they have good welds on their submarines as we do on ours. And but then you have the other technologies that are involved. It's amazing. It's amazing how much goes into submarines. In any event, I'm just kind of drifting here. Connecticut's economy has not been doing well. Getting a clear answer on this is difficult because, quite frankly, the data that you get on Connecticut's economy is contradictory. That's right. Some say it's growing, some say it's shrinking, and some say it's flat. So who do you want to believe? So my problem is when you have the Federal Reserve, and more specifically the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, reporting that Connecticut's economy has shrunk and not grown, but you have other sources saying otherwise, I got to figure out who I'm going to believe. Yeah, so I do not think that Connecticut, I believe when I look around, Connecticut is either in a state of stasis, which you would expect of a socialist state, or very slight growth. Okay, but then that's sort of the foundation, and then you have the federal government jumping in with awarding contracts to these companies that give significant boosts to the local economy. So it's hard to say how far-reaching the effects are, but sure. I mean, you got Groton, New London, Montville, I think. You could reach over to Waterford, and then north to maybe even Ledyard. So there is a ripple effect, if you will, a trickle-down effect. How do we like that? A federal trickle-down effect. Well, we haven't had that discussion now, have we? And that aids the economy in that area. Okay, that said, it's interesting. There's this mayor of Groton was being interviewed about this new announcement by the the Department of War. What am I saying? I meant to say the Department of War. Got that. Connecticut has the most wealthiest population per capita in the U.S. Well, evil empire, the thing is, if you take a close look at it, Connecticut really does end up being an example of a two-culture state. Yes, you're going to have, because of the outrageous wealth of people in, say, Fairfield County, and you'd be surprised at the number of wealthy communities on the east side of the state as well. I mean, there was a house for sale for $40 million back in the woods in Connecticut somewhere. Oh, my God. Then there's another one for $35 million on the coast in Madison. Yeah, so you have, it's how should I say this, outrageous wealth is not concentrated in any one particular place. Nonetheless, when you look at New Haven and Bridgeport, New Britain, yes, Hartford, Waterbury is really bad. You have a lot of poor people, okay? Now, let's see. I'm not wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. No, there's one number. If you want to use one number, okay, then yes, you're going to have something like that. But you know what here, since I can do this, I'm going to do this. All right, here's the question for the all-knowing internet. Which state has the highest median income in America? Let's see what they say. Okay, well, bust my jowls. Do they give us a second and a third here? Yep, they don't include Connecticut. So Massachusetts has the highest median income in the nation at $114,000. But depending upon who you're talking to, in Connecticut, it's around $92,000. All right. But then, like they say, other states like New Jersey have, higher numbers. So yeah, we're up there. Okay. So wealthiest per capita. All right. If we want to talk about income, I think is what we want to, unless you have a different definition of wealthiest, in which case you're being a lot more subtle than I would have expected. Because wealthiest refer not just to annual income, but assets owned. Okay. So it's almost like you're saying Connecticut is the landlord of America. Okay. Sure. All right. That said, where do I want to go with this? You still have to acknowledge that not everybody in any given state is wealthy, that there is such a thing as an average. Some are higher and some are lower. Okay. And I would say that all right, let's just go through a quick statistics lesson. If you never took statistics, they teach you that there's a difference between what we call the mean or the average versus the median. So the problem you see is if you have a few people with extremely expensive houses, it will create the false impression that everybody else has an average price home that's higher than it really is. So instead of adding everything up and averaging it, you have to take the list. So let's say it's 1,000 homes. You got a home number 500, and whatever that value is, that's your median value. And that would be considered probably closer to a fair measure, even if you have a huge difference. Let's see, per person, you're the wealthiest population in the country. Again, this word wealthiest. I need a better term than wealthy. Let's see, wealthy is going to be, all right, I can't believe I'm doing this, so bear with me, dear audience. I'm going for it. How is wealth per capita measured? Wealth per capita measured in America. Let's see what they say. Net worth. Okay. All right, so let's go with net worth then. Which state in America has the highest net worth? That may not be correct either, but all right, we'll go for it. All right, so the measure is median household net worth. Okay. And so the idea is that net worth is somehow a measure of wealth as opposed to income. All right. If you go that route, Hawaii is number one, 692,000, followed by Washington at 456. New Hampshire comes in at 412. So somewhere down, all right. Okay, I get it. Bear with me here. What is the median household net worth in Connecticut? Okay, and 200,000. Oh my God, I'm sorry. Evil empire. We're not there. No, well, you could say that. You have the fourth lowest fourth low. Okay, yeah, that's probably right. But, you make an interesting point here. If you're talking about us having the fourth lowest population and a high net worth, that's going to be out of line with the rest of the country, suggesting that Connecticut is just home to a lot of rich bastards. And that, I hate to break the news, is just not true. And I offer this on the basis of having lived in Connecticut most of my life and having traveled around Connecticut for a lot of my life. And I can tell you that there is a very clear distinction. I mean, I should say to your eyes, there's a very clear distinction, but you have to drive around to see it. And on one side of the line, this invisible line, you're going to find those people who are very wealthy. They have $1 million plus homes, etc. But then on the other side of the line, you're going to find those people who have their cars up on blocks in the driveway. They've got a boat stashed in the back and sitting there for a while. The house looks pretty good, or it might look a little funky, but you can tell there's just not the same as what you saw in those rich, affluent neighborhoods. And so these are the two worlds that we have here in Connecticut. It's a reality. And yes, so when you put the two together, it depends on how to look at it. All right, by the way, since you brought this up, young man, I'm going to make the point. Over the last 15 years, there has been a net outflow of rich people. So what's the problem here? Connecticut has a progressive income tax. The higher your income, the more you get taxed. So it turns out that it's a small number of people, at least in the past, it was something like, let's see here, I want to get this right. It was like 200 families that pay for 30% of the taxes in Connecticut. That's insane. So as you begin to lose some of those people, the tax now call it a disproportion of the tax burden shifts to everybody else in Connecticut. And they don't care. They left because Connecticut was just getting crazier and crazier about, quote, taxing the rich. Right. So, yes. So if you want to take a little time while I'm sitting here yammering away, check it out. And yeah, so I think median household income, median household net worth is a useful measure of what I'll call affluence in a given state. And hey, hate to break the news, but if the highest state is Hawaii with nearly $700,000 per household net worth, and then the next one is over 400,000, and it just goes down from there, Connecticut is not going to be very high here. All right, you know what? I'm going to do another one here. Which state has the lowest household median net worth? I bet you it's Mississippi. Let's see. Oh, I was close. Arkansas. Okay. The lowest household median net worth is $62,000. Ay, dude. Okay, see if somebody can give us a list here. Give me a list. Come on. 100K plus? What? Dude. No. This is all right. There are this gets tricky. There are different measures that Arkansas number may not be good. There's a problem here with definition of terms, just to say it. All right. So I'm not an economist. I just play one on my podcast. So in any event, the point is Connecticut is not at the top and it's not at the bottom. And if anything, it's probably in the top third, top quarter, I would say, throughout the country. Anyway, what does this all lead to? This leads to this, what people are bitching and moaning about, including my friend Eric. If you're going to show up, maybe I should let him know. Silly me. Where did it go? There it is. Okay. So using Connecticut as an example, all right? This thing is acting nutty. There are many factors at play which make for a very weak market in real estate, which is a reflection of the economy as well. People complain that, let's see here, invites, I just want to let them know. People complain that affordability in Connecticut has become a huge problem. And I would say that that's true. However, you cannot leave out the conditions of the marketplace if you're going to try and understand. If you're going to try and understand just what the affordability issue in Connecticut is. The first thing to look at, so the big point that I was making last night is that there are, I'll put this, hold on a second. I want to get my facts straight on this. Okay, the first issue is that we have low inventory in the state. And I pointed out that Connecticut, if you take the ratio of the number of houses that are for sale, that are on the market in any given month, and you divide it by the total housing stock that's available for sale, potentially, you get a number. And that number is 0.3%. Okay, that's less than 1% of the housing stock at any point in time being on the market. That's the lowest number in the nation. All right. Now, some guy named Michael Ortiz put up a few comments about it the other day on, I think, on X. And so, fine, it's true. And it's a problem. It affects real estate agents who are trying to earn a living. So the ones who already have good relations, been in the business for a long time, they're able to stay in the game. The newbies like us, it's a little bit more of a challenge, so shall we say. So when you look at this low inventory number, the first thought then is that buyers, are going to be making demand or saying, I want a house. Where am I going to find a house? There was an article about a couple that spent 2 years looking for houses. They went to nearly 30 different places before they finally found something. Okay. And that is a good measure, I would say, of the demand picture in Connecticut. Low inventory. They had to grab whatever they could. They were not going to settle. And so it took them 2 years. This is a situation that could apply to many other people as well. And it puts another look on the whole question of the rental market, which are all of the discussion. But the thing I want to stick with here is that low inventory rate and how did we get there? So for Eric's benefit and you, my dear audience, let me explain. There are one of the purposes in life, right, is to pay off your mortgage so you can own your home free and clear. Now, if I was sitting around with some friends, I would tease them a little bit and say, all right, go ahead, guess as to how many houses in America are owned. What's the percentage of houses that are owned free and clear in America? Well, to cut to the chase, is 40%, and it's rising. Not real estate, household. Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem, Evil Empire. You have these different economic terms for defining net worth and income. It gets a little complicated. And if I had more time, I should, out of respect to you, I should sort this stuff out so that we're clear. Each of these, third in the country as far as, let's see here, You're going with household income. Okay. So just to make the point that household income, right, would not be confused with median income. So median income is going to refer to an individual, regardless of whether he's in a house or not. Now you go to the people who own houses, they're going to be higher in average to begin with, because if you're talking about household income, you're taking out you know what? I'd have to check that too, but here's my statement. You would have to take out the rental market as part of your estimate of household income. And yes, renters are going to have a lower median income than homeowners. And so this is the kind of thing that has to be straightened out. Yeah, it's okay. So there's clearly Connecticut could be thought of as an affluent state. We get it. But I'd say it's unique and peculiar. I mean, especially if you want to just take New England, all right, and analyze the economies in each of the states, right? Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont, and to compare Connecticut with the rest of them. I think comparing New Hampshire and Connecticut is particularly interesting because I think of New Hampshire as having a manufacturing tradition that is kind of comparable to Connecticut. Not quite as heavyweight, but they're still in there. That's the average income in your state. Yeah, okay. So, and, all right, so I guess, all right, let's see, how do I want to deal with this? The thing I'm fishing for here, okay, is the impact of income on one, affordability, and two, availability of housing. So let me get to the point that I wanted to make. Inventory has been low for quite some time, and there are a bunch of reasons for it. The two most important are what we would call those people who own their homes free and clear, right? They probably are not planning on selling their home. And they're sitting on equity. They're sitting on a lot of equity. And they may find a way to take out a loan to use that equity for other purposes. And so, no, they are not going to sell their homes. And then the second is aging in place. You have a bunch of folks, older folks, maybe like me, who have no intention of leaving their homes. They are going to age in place. And there's one person I talked to, she said, I'm going to die in place. I am not leaving my home for nothing. So here's another thing to keep in mind, by the way. For these people who are deciding to age in place, two factors. As they age, the value of the house will increase, and as the value of the house increases, they will have more and more equity at their disposal to pay for the help they will need when they become decrepit and frail and insist on staying in the house. So I think you've got a prescription there for a future where, the availability of homes is not going to be great. So you would say, okay, well, if all these people are going to insist on staying in their home by various means, and you have all this demand and people can't afford houses, well, maybe the answer is, where have we heard this term before? Affordable housing, yes. So affordable housing then pushes us into this other subject of which I am no fan, known in the past as Statute 8-30G, okay, which, initiated by the state legislature directing towns to make sure that when they have construction projects for new housing, that a certain percentage of that must be affordable housing. Now, I don't know all the details. Let's see, so you want to remove the Section 8 prices you're paying for? Well, the first thing is Section 8. It's a mixed bag. All right, you're going to find a lot of Section 8 housing in New Britain, Bridgeport, Hartford, the poor towns, so to speak. But certainly in my travels, I've only had an interaction with one person who was looking for a rental, who was looking to be under the Section 8 program. And, I told her, look, you're the one who has to apply for Section 8. So I'm waiting. Never heard from her again. So, and I guess, when you have these applications, that creates barriers of its own. But the point I'm trying to make is that Section 8 housing, while a factor, and I think there are some landlords who benefit from it, yes, slumlords. And there are slumlords. Oh my God. There was this article about this family in New Haven that owns, God, hundreds of properties. And they are constantly being dragged into court by the tenants for one thing or another. Wish I could remember their name, but these brothers. And so, yeah, these people exist. There are slumlords in Connecticut. It's true. Big slumlords and little slumlords. Okay, but they're not the only players. And I think the point I'm trying to make is that I do not think that slumlords are a dominant factor in the market. Factor nonetheless, and they make life miserable for renters. And I wish there were better methods for getting them to do their job. All right. But this is the court system and the way it works. Dare I suggest anything else? Right. Okay. So, putting up illegal aliens. Yes, you're absolutely right about that. And yes, we know that. This has been one of Lamont's campaign issues. We're going to protect people in Connecticut from ICE. Okay. I'm going to call Governor Lamont, Yale Business School graduate, successful venture capitalist, along with his wife. Is it Annie? Well, I'm going to say it. Stupid. Yes, Governor Lamont, you are being stupid. And let me explain. It turns out that the Department of Homeland Security before I get into that, I want to point out that Governor Lamont, it's people like you and your communistic ilk, okay, that have created this problem in the first place by refusing to cooperate with ICE in order to remove illegals in the prisons. They had to wait outside until these guys were released, and then they would pounce on them. That's on you, Governor Lamont. That's on you and your other communist buddies who did this on purpose in order to create these problems. Let's see, New England entered this.
Hello.
Okay. All right.
There.
All right. We have a surprise
I can't hear you very well. I walk down this aisle.
All right. Yes.
You're live. I can't hear you very well because of all the noise around me. But we are Common Sense News Entertainment here live at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts, where I have obtained preseason tickets, as the True Course told you, the Patriots and the Philadelphia Eagles. And right now, I've stepped away for a moment to call you guys. Philadelphia is down by Patriots up 17-14.
Okay.
Common Sense News Entertainment Sports. Here we go, huh?
Yes. All right. Well, we know how predictive the preseason is.
What's that? Say that again?
We know how predictive the preseason is.
That's right, how important it is. But I'm here with my son, and we're having a great time. I'll give a shout out to the Cracker Barrel restaurant. We're on the way up here. Hey, Darren, I'm exhausted. I have to walk about 5 miles. It feels like about 5 miles to get here, but
yeah.
Anyway, I can't hear you very well, so now it's so loud in here. And
what a shame.
So
what a shame. What a shame.
What a shame. What a shame. But we're having a great time. We're having a ball. So I will let you guys go.
All right. Well, there's only one of us. Me.
That's right. Speedy delivery. Bye, everybody.
All right.
I'll see you soon.
Okay. Later. All right. Well, there you go. Live. It's interesting. This joint venture between Yankee T News and Common Sense News and Entertainment just takes on the most interesting twists and turns. All right. So, meantime, Evil Empire is unloading, baby. Unloading. All right. So let's go back. Where were we here? I was getting to talking about the illegals, and I was ranting about how Governor Lamont has created. Boy, there's a hell of a slip. No. Governor Lamont, possibly soon to be ex-Governor Lamont. You never know. Anyway, it's caused a problem. Now, while he's gloating and while he's supposedly respecting his base, it's all nuts about accusing ICE of all these things when they forced ICE to have to resort to these tactics in the first place. There's a little something to be considered, ladies and gentlemen. The folks at the Department of Homeland Security might just be a little bit more clever and adaptive than you think when it comes to dealing with illegals in our state. Okay? First of all, remember that as of July 1st, the money was released now to hire, count them, 10,000 more ICE agents. That's a good number. We can work with that. That'll get up removals and deportations just fine. Okay. However, this does not become a case of taking a brute force approach. No. If you're reading up on this, now you're going to find that Department of Homeland Security / ICE is using a, wait for it, stealth approach, approaching undercover work. All right. The ability of these communist nut jobs to be able to go after ICE is reduced pretty much to zero. All right. You have, if they cannot tell who's who in the street, how are they going to send out the alarm? We'll see how this goes. I tend to be a little bit optimistic. I'm just saying. And so the report from other parts of the country, yes. And I think there was an early report that the number of arrests for illegals has really shot up in the last month or so. Okay, Ricky. Okay. Look, this is very interesting. It's kind of like I'm the home office here.
You are. I just saw Jason pop in.
And so he checked in from Foxborough, and you're checking in from, I'm going to guess, North Haven or something.
Yeah, we're on our way. The missus is on the way into the truck, and we're on our way to Stratford to see a show.
What happened to Nugget?
Oh no, I'm not doing a show tonight.
Oh, and so where are you going again?
Joey C's Boathouse, a venue that I do sound at, but I'm not on sound this weekend. I'm on vacation, so.
All right. Well, this is one of the funny things. In my humble opinion, if anybody deserves to be approached by people and to look at you admiringly and say, "Oh, it's you, it's DJ Ricky. Can I have your autograph, please?"
I don't like that kind of person.
You don't get those requests.
No, it's usually the people on stage, not me.
Right.
I'm behind the curtain.
So this is another thing then. So we, as you said, yes, for these bands, there are groupies. However, there are no groupies for the audio technicians.
We get the leftovers. It's a very period of time, so it doesn't really make a difference.
There you go. How do you like them apples? Anyway, I'm carrying on here about affordability in real estate. So
I heard you were talking about yeah. I don't have any intention of selling the house anytime soon, or even selling the house. And you talk getting taxed out of your house.
Look, if there was if people were getting taxed out of their houses, there would be more houses on the market.
Fine. There she comes.
Okay.
The drum roll, please.
Let's see.
It's Irene.
What is that? There's in the back of my mind, I hear the song that should be playing for her.
Court.
It's
those are parts from when we were working at Mark the other day. You can just kind of step that for now. It's not, that shouldn't interfere with you.
Evil Empire has a question for you, Ricky.
Yeah.
Dude, is that inmate transport van?
This is the yeah, it does look like one. You could tell John we've done a video where we locked up Nugget in the back there, and we called him. It does look like an inmate transport to the court.
Should I take my own?
What? No, just relax. I'm just.
Just drop me off.
Irene, relax. I just didn't really quick. Okay. Court, this is going to be a fast one like Jason's too.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean,
Because if the light's not, you can't see me, hon. Just 1 minute.
the audio. Actually, you look like an evil character from a movie here.
This is a live stream.
Yeah, this is a live stream.
Your face is partially obscured.
Yeah, yeah. Because, wait, I thought there was. What happened here? Hold on. All right. Then this is. She doesn't want any nonsense. So.
No, it's not nonsense. All right, do it for a few minutes. Do your thing
What?
for a few. I just don't want all those lights on.
I have to have the lights on. You can't see me.
Before we get on the highway, you got like 5 minutes.
Well, rest assured, I can barely
What are we
see you
talking about?
today.
What's on the tonight?
Getting old and getting kicked out of your house because you can't afford taxes anymore.
Oh,
Getting taxed out of your house because they say, "Oh, your house is worth," you know,
isn't there no?
it keeps going up in value. And you leave, and they keep
Is there no
whacking you.
taxes in the South?
Well, it's different. Yeah.
Car taxes.
No. Every state is different.
Just lower in the
It's
South.
a good question. Courtney will probably answer that one. She wants to know about housing taxes, property taxes with houses. Why are we getting taxed for the value of our house if we were to sell it? But we're not selling the house. We shouldn't.
And in 10 years, we want up
Well, right. When we first moved into our house, their taxes were only.
People get condos and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. That's what court's talking about. Where they go, all right, they sell their house, and then they get the money, and they live in what's called Section 8 affordable housing. Out in North Haven, we have. It's not that bad in North Haven.
Oh, we have 55 and older.
It's you got to be 55 or 60 and over to move into one of these places.
For Section 8 housing?
Yeah.
Younger people can. I'm not sure that's true. Maybe the rules have changed, but I will tell you, curiously, when I used to live when Kathy and I lived in our condo in Stamford, the person who moved in on the Section 8 program, and she was a young woman.
Okay. Maybe single mothers and stuff. Boy, you're a little bit.
Excuse me.
Yeah. You're like, and you can do it till you get to the highway. No, you're like, I need music.
No, but what's his
You're
opinion?
going to see a live show.
What's his opinion? I can't. I want to be engaging in the conversation. You won't let me.
All right. I'm going to try to unplug this, and you tell me if you can hear Irene.
Well, she's got to speak up.
Hi.
There you are. Hi, Irene.
Hi, Court. Yeah, so I'm very curious. Like, it makes my heart sad because so many of my friends' parents had to leave their homes because they were getting taxed. And what it was like about 3 years ago, the tax assessment went up, including ours. And it's unbelievable. Like, that's not what the property is worth. And they're just taxing it. They are, right?
Right. Well, they're.
You're right there. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hi.
Okay. Hi. So one example is that I have to say, ma'am, that when you have as a husband who is technology, and you have the noise is absolutely atrocious. It's quite amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you think that Connecticut is the worst culprit of this?
California.
Is Connecticut for affordability?
Connecticut is the home of the tax fee. Connecticut
figure out what you're saying.
Oh, he can't hear me because it is
Static. Too much static.
It's staticky. They can't hear. Can I plug my headphones in?
Right.
Oh, here. Ricky, hold on. I'm gonna give it back to you. I'm gonna give it back to you. You might
I'm gonna have to edit this.
darn it. I was going.
We're getting on the highway.
I don't think I can hear.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what to say. I mean, this is I will have to talk to Ricky about this later. There are problems. Yes, your audio has went to crap. That is correct. I was trying to give him a chance. Hey, he's the audio guy. He's the sound guy at all these rock concerts. And he does know a lot of stuff. I've gotten to talk with him a bit about different areas of audio technology. But I don't know. There has to be a whole new setup that he needs in order to solve this problem. And for what it's worth, I mean, maybe it's the location for me out in the woods here in Killingworth. The reception for AM radio can be just horrible, right? Some days it's kind of okay, but other times it's not. The weather, you have things with the ionosphere can affect reception and all that crap. Anyway. So he was getting on about Section 8 housing, and he was getting on about how increased property taxes are forcing people out of their homes. Okay, that, to me, ladies and gentlemen, is a campaign issue, and it should be. Yeah, his audience, yes. If he's transporting inmates, he ain't talking, okay? And the marshal doesn't want him to say a single word because, you know what? They may not be inmates, Evil Empire. They might be illegals being deported. Something to consider. But yes, no, his audio was terrible. So I don't know. But he checked in. Jason checked in. All good. All good. All right. So it is a problem. And I think, let's see, hopefully. Yeah, that's right. Well, he ain't talking. So all we can do is conjecture. Note to self, I have to look into this. This is an important question. What is the extent to which assessments are forcing people out of their homes? It's a very important question. Because that's a form of eviction, essentially. Renters have a higher success rate for staying in their houses than homeowners would be after a high assessment. Anyway, I started to mention Guilford. All right. Now, I don't know what the story is in other towns, but Guilford a couple of years ago had a high assessment, and people in Guilford went nuts. Okay. They got, if I'm correct about this, something on the order of 700 appeals to lower those assessments. That's a lot of appeals. And if I remember correctly, it was like 400 of them were rejected. Maybe 300, they give them a little off, but the rest, forget it. So this is a serious issue. And it's because on the other side of the ledger, let's face it, if you have unions, and what towns don't have unions, they're always looking for more money, right? And material costs are inflated, and other things are going on, which gets into a larger issue here, which does then affect people's ability to stay in their homes. And it isn't just about inflation. Okay, we've talked, all right, and on the point of inflation, I need to make this point because it is important. All right, I'll just say up until maybe 4 months ago. Does that sound right? Yeah, it's probably about right. Up until about 4 months ago, you had the general impression, based upon economists, saying that since Joe Biden got into office, we've had about 25% inflation. That's still pretty bad. But the gentleman named Jeffrey Tucker, who runs the Brownstone Institute, got on Steve Bannon's War Room. I think it was I want to say late June, but I could be wrong. And he said, well, we've done some research and we come up with a very different number. When you take a more careful analysis of the expenses of various products, the inflation rate is closer to 50%. In other words, your buying power has been cut in half just in the last 6 years. Cut in half. That's unbelievable. But so what does that mean if I say cut in half? I was standing at the counter the other day and I bought, let's see here, coffee, a little package of crackers, slices of salami and cheese, and one other thing I can't remember. But the total bill was $14. Now that was ridiculously expensive, but this is an example of what's happening. So President Trump is doing what he can, right? So fighting to keep gas prices down, which is treated as the big indicator. And then this thing about importing 300,000 pounds or tons of ground beef. And American cattlemen don't like that, but it's going to help to hold prices down. I mean, there's a sense that even if inflation was down, it's still there. And when you have an inflated price, inflating the inflated price has even more dramatic impact. And I think now, finally, we're really beginning to feel it. We're beginning to feel the bite of inflation. But the real cause of this inflation, which is also affecting affordability, is federal debt. You heard it here first. Let's see, Brownston's, get a grip. What is the matter with you? They're not a Zionist organization. Nut job. Good God. No, I personally know Jeffrey Tucker, and I've met these people. And first of all, if you happen to be leaning towards Israel rather than away from Israel, that doesn't necessarily make you a Zionist. That's one thing to keep in mind. But no, I don't buy it. Nope. Not having been to many of their dinners, because I've met many of the people there, and it's seen the speakers they have. Yeah, okay, you know what? They've had some speakers from Israel. Wow. I guess that makes them a Zionist organization. Who should be there? Some jihadi communists? Is that who they should be having? No. Nice try. No. Well, hey, I'm just going to say, all right, you know what? All right, this is weird. I'm having a conversation with some chat thing going on here with Evil Empire. All right, I'm getting dragged in another direction. I'm going to come back to the federal debt issue. That is the one that's driving this, okay? Because we are spending so much more money to service that debt, and it impacts what the federal government is able to do in other parts. I couldn't believe the stat I heard, okay? Historically, ladies and gentlemen, for a very long time, it was 20% of our GDP that was associated with federal spending. Would you care to guess what it's up to now? It's approaching 40%. And that's largely because of the increase in debt. This is a bad situation. Now, if you're looking around for somebody to blame, I'm afraid the answer is all too obvious. It's a handful of people in Congress. They're the ones who control the purse strings. They're the ones who are voting for these different spending increases. They are the bad actors. They're the ones who need to get a grip, all right, and confront the political nightmare that comes with reducing federal spending and starting to reduce the federal debt. Now, in all fairness, and I don't pretend to understand this in full, we've had our Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent come out and mention that he and the president have what was the term for it? A subtle plan, a discrete plan. Oh, that's right, a discrete plan for handling the federal debt. Well, part of that discrete plan is still rested on a conventional formula that most conservative economists, I'm not sure, they say we have to grow our way out of this. Some people misspeak and they say spend, but no, we have to grow the economy. Our GDP has to be well in excess of 3%, plus getting the inflation down if we're going to begin to pay this off. But let me just make a point that might be a little uncomfortable. Zionist money. Look, They don't have as much money as you think, evil empire. Are you serious? Okay, I trust you're just jerking my chain here. All right. Buy gold and silver, yes. Okay, since you brought that up, I'm going to make the point that the real value of gold, when you're looking at that per ounce price, all right, is that it is a measure of how well the economies are doing. So since the American economy is pretty dominant in the world, gold would be a proxy for how the American economy is doing. And the short answer is the American economy is not doing as well as you think. On the plus side, you may see some increase in wages, increased income, the stock market's doing well, etc. But in the meantime, there's all this debt that has to be paid back. Okay, earning more money to pay the debt back. However, here's your quiz question. Right. Anyway, the point I want to make is as the higher the gold price goes, that's telling you that the dollar and the economy in general is less sound, less creditworthy. So in its place, gold becomes more valuable. In my opinion, another way to think about this is that gold represents a barometer for economic performance and is, well, afloat. But so the notion is, in other words, the true value of your economy is reflected in the value of gold. And for that true value, gold never changes. Okay? If the fiat economy is inflating and inflating and inflating, then it looks like the gold price is going up. But this is only as a function of the rest of the economy. If we were to deflate the other side of the ledger, we would see the gold price come down. Again, the point that I'm trying to make is I believe there's a balance between the two. Now, I haven't heard anybody talk like this. Maybe it's just me. It's not. Oh, God. The Rothschilds are not the only one. By the way, I just want to remind you. Oh, and now you want to talk about the petrodollars? Yeah. All right, we'll get to the petrodollar. The $40 trillion debt, it's not to the Rothschilds. Although you raise an interesting point, it's the same question I want to ask. Who did we borrow this money from? Okay, it was printed, right? So what? The money is owed to the federal government. So the money they print, and whatever is printed is then rendered in the form of a bond. It's then sold through the discount window to the big banks who are members of the Fed. So I don't have to remind you that the Fed is a, quote, money cartel, just the same way that the OPEC is an oil cartel. And yes, so there they sit, they are a quasi-government organization, or they're a quasi-corporation. It's composed of private members, and they all feed at the trough of public debt and use it to their own advantage. Okay, that said, so if they're assuming the debt, what is happening here? They have to have something in exchange, right? So what is that something in exchange? Is it dollars? Is it gold? What is it? You know what? I'm asking the question. I'm guilty. I don't know the answer. So you want to keep saying the Rothschilds? No. Okay, I don't have it in front of me. I will say evil empire. The Rothschilds are one member, okay, of the Federal Reserve. I forget what the number is, but it's very strange. You've got, let's see, here we go. How many members in the Federal Reserve? Okay, see if they tell the truth here. 12, no. That's all right, that's misleading. No. How many private, there you go, private, it should be private members, Private, private members in the Federal Reserve. Okay, well, again, there were the misleading information. This is annoying. Okay, this is what you get, though, okay? The other way of putting it is who owns the Federal Reserve, all right? You could go with that. Let's try that. Are they going to be honest about this? No, they're not. Okay. So the Rothschilds, evil empire, are not the only ones. All right. And no, it's too easy. When you're sitting there constantly obsessing, all right, on one family, which, yes, rich and powerful as they are, still one player. They don't own all the money. They just don't. No, I wouldn't say it's been blocked. It's where you go looking. I'm sure that if I used a super feature on Claude or ChatGPT, we'd get to the bottom of this. But the answer is that all the major banks, okay, Chase, JP Morgan, Citibank, what is that, Pittsburgh National Bank, I'm sure I'm leaving a few out here, are all, quote, members of the Federal Reserve. Now, and this might play to your point, there are also, believe it or not, private members of the Federal Reserve. And they're as members of the Federal Reserve, I would just make the general statement, their purpose in life is to, quote, stabilize the economy. Stabilizing the economy is dictated by, I believe, based upon how they talk, monetary policy. And when they say monetary policy, they're talking about interest rates. So everybody, if you're watching CNBC, they're always, what are they going to, what's the Fed going to do next? Oh my God, hey Bob, have you got the latest report on the Federal Reserve? Well, yeah, John, I've just been back from another meeting there with Kevin Warsh, the new guy who runs the Fed. He's talking a lot of nonsense. And so just because they're not going to raise the rates or lower the rates now doesn't mean they aren't going to do it later. Dude, I mean, it's obsessive. All right. Okay. No, I just control all of this. For example, long forgotten, I believe it was 2016 or 2018, but when President Trump rode into town, let's just say he put the slamma-jamma on the Rothschilds and others. Little known fact was that at this time period, the Rothschilds had to sell. Since when are the Rothschilds forced to sell anything? But they were forced to sell this huge estate that they had in Austria. So no, they don't own everything. They don't control everything. I mean, what are you going to call proof? All right. I'm giving you information I read. All right. First of all, all right, you're going to need a better set of criteria. You're going to need better standards for data and analysis than just shouting at me to prove it. All right. Because all I'm going to be doing is citing stuff from the internet. Now, at some point where you actually start to become a critical thinker about the economy and how economics works, you're going to say, well, gee, who owns what? Are you going to tell me that the Chinese economy is owned by the Rothschilds? Are you going to tell me that the Russian economy is owned by the Rothschilds? Somehow, common sense says no. So if you're trying to figure, so there are two things you're going to want to figure out here, right? Sort of like cash, income, assets. All right. So as Eric likes to intone all the time, assets minus liabilities equal net worth. Okay. So we want to think of all the things that constitute assets in the world. And you're going to have to try and figure out, I mean, I know they don't reveal it, they keep it a secret, but you're going to want to try and reason out what the likely portion is of the total economy that's owned by the Rothschilds. And I'm going to tell you, it's only a part, and it's not a very big part. It's still big relative to others, and they can cause trouble as they do, but no, you got to use common sense here. Common sense, remember? All right. John, take a look at that link. Who's John? What link? No, but why are they the only country that doesn't have a federal bank? Which country is that? Well, first of all, Russia has a federal bank. All right. Now, when you say federal bank, you might say a central state bank. Right? Oh, DJ Ricky. John, take a look at that link. Oh. Again, I don't know what you're talking about. All right. Again, you have, look, if you're going to think this through, you have to ask what we will call contrarian questions. If somebody's saying something is true, then you're going to ask, in what ways is it not true? If it's true, true compared to what? Not a federally controlled banking. Wait, huh? What? Federally controlled banking system. You're too cryptic. You got to tell me who you're talking about. You know, I just I don't know how to respond to that. Okay, okay. So what I'm trying to get at here is that there are wealthy families. There are wealthy families you don't know about. All right, I'm going to give you a small one you never heard of, the Bessemer Trust. Well, what's that all about? Well, the Bessemer Trust is because that name Bessemer should be a hint. If you know anything about steel manufacturing technology, you know that the main method by which America made steel in the early 1900s was the Bessemer process. Huge. It was licensed by a guy named Flagler, okay? And over time, though, Bessemer, the technology for making steel improved. I think Bessemer process is here. Another fascinating question, ladies and gentlemen, I have to ask. Is the Bessemer process still used? And the answer is no. All right. So I guess 1974 was the last use of the Bessemer process. But for the time that it was used, it was huge. Money was made. You got a rich family. They've learned how to invest their money. The technology they invested in is obsolete, but they're not. So that's one. There's another. It's called the Sun Oil Company. It said there is a Sun Company which is publicly traded. At least like the Sunoco people, those gas stations. That's a whole other thing all by itself. They have their own money. All right. The Rockefellers, what? The Rockefellers in hock to the Rothschilds' evil empire? This is silly. Okay. So you have all these people, and let's see, who do I want to throw into this? Who's that guy? Oh, Elon Musk. Is Elon Musk just a part of the Rothschilds? I don't think so. I don't think so. So this is kind of like, so all of this cries out for a real analysis, okay, rather than constantly beating the same drum for the same easy, and by the way, if you're constantly obsessing over the Rothschilds, then you're ignoring, obscuring, avoiding, talking about the other rich folks. So we don't focus on them, Jeff Bezos, as well as Elon. And, there's so many others. Look, another way to look at this is that Forbes, I think they still put out the 500 wealthiest people in the world every October. It was, an annual event, right? And those 500 people would have, they're ranked in terms of how many billions of dollars they have. There came a point where having $1 billion is not enough to get you on the list. Oh my God, it's crazy. All right, but also a reflection of concentration of wealth. Another discussion. All right, DARPA controlled what? Gaddafi? What? A DARPA controlled puppet. All right, dude, I think you're like. So there's this little bucket. Okay, and I look inside that bucket, and there's a little somebody in there who's banging his head against the side of the bucket, waving his hands, accusing everybody around him. Well, there's nobody else around, but he's accusing everybody around him of a one thing or another. You're responsible. You did that. This happened. Why did that happen? What did you do? That would be you, evil empire, at least at the moment. Stuff like this. All right. Obviously, you do not wish to address these issues. And I'm just going to start with one or two, the big two. What about China? And what about Russia? Are you going to tell me they're both owned? No. Where did they all come from? Yes. Yes. Started in their garages. Yes. Okay. the way the Rothschilds started, as I understand it, okay, you could say they invented the concept of the family office. As the story goes, you had the senior Rothschild, you had 5 sons. And so the senior Rothschild was already a banker of sorts, not really crazy wealthy. And he had directed each of his sons to go to a different city. One go to London, one go to Paris. I think one might have gone to America. Another went to Moscow, perhaps, Vienna, Rome. Okay. In any event, it's their job to build up a banking business in each of these cities. Now, here's the thing. Whenever money was taken out, especially if it was a personal loan, you did not get that loan from somebody else. You borrowed against your own family. And so then you paid the interest on that loan back into your own family. And that's how they grew their wealth. Okay. And then from there, they were able to reach out and start, shall I say, acquiring and controlling other people. So it helps when you keep it all in the family. And mind you, while that's going on, you still had other empires being built, whether it's railroads, oil, coal, electricity. Yeah, anyway, I just, all right, so let me go back to this. Where is it? Or forget that part. Federal control system, Rothschild, Gaddafi. What am I looking at here? You asked an important question here. Where did it go? Yeah, not a federal controlled. It'd be interesting. I mean, when you look at smaller countries, I don't know. Here's the other interesting question. You have the offshore banking empire, Bermuda, Cayman Islands. I think is Antigua part of it. There are others. I can't think of them. Switzerland would be considered it, kind of. There's a bunch, all right? And everybody and their cousin is involved in being involved in these offshore banking systems. An unstated friend of mine, okay? He made money in a small manufacturing enterprise, and he has a little chunk of change, and guess what? He's put a fair bit of it into the Cayman Islands. He's not fabulously wealthy, but he's got money. And so that's how he uses it, smartly. So there you go. So it just, yeah, I guess the point I'm beating to death here, evil empire, is there more wealthy people than you think. Yeah, where do they all come from? So, and which day are you talking about? You have to take the time to analyze who you're discussing. Look, here's the way I would set it up. You could, if you wanted to do the research, it'll take time, require a lot of effort, but you too can get a lot of back issues of the Forbes 500 richest when they put it out in October. You could go back 20 years, all right? And then sort of trace what's happened. And they tell you, each year when they put out the list, they will also say, well, here are the new additions to the list, and here are the people who fell off the list. Well, whatever became of the people who fell off the list, guess what? They're still rich. They're just not as rich. So, are you going to tell me the Rothschilds control all these people? It's ridiculous on its face. So the interaction between the Rothschilds and Israel, now that's a whole other discussion. Okay. But anyway, I have beaten this to death more than enough here. All right, where do I want to go with this? The affordability issue, again, just to reiterate, the fact that so many people own their homes free and clear, that so many people are aging in place, they ain't going nowhere, and that is going to continue to keep housing prices high. And the idea that 8-30G and now Public Act 25-1 is going to magically make so many more homes built that it's going to reduce pressure for affordability. All right, you're not going to like what I'm about to say. Okay, I carried on about ICE, so I'll carry on a little bit more. There are some signs in the real estate market that enough people who are illegals have either removed themselves or been removed by ICE such that more rentals are available and rental prices are going down, okay? And that there might be a slight increase in housing, but I'm not seeing it. It's just a claim. So and just, I mean, in real estate, we talk about whether it's a buyer's market or a seller's market. If you have a lot of houses to sell that are available, then that gives the buyers a lot of choices, so it becomes a buyer's market. If there are very few houses available for buyers, the more buyers and sellers, then it becomes a seller's market. They can charge whatever they want. So it's just classic supply and demand. All right, that's the usual model. But then you have to look at the things that are causing the levels of demand and the levels of supply to be what they are. And these I have outlined already. And if, let's see here, where did they all come from? That was your last question there a few minutes ago. Yeah, all right. Okay, so I needed to slip something in here about AI, although we're going to get into it in a big way. Oh, wait, before I go on, one other point I want to make about real estate is that I managed to find this spreadsheet that was put out by the Connecticut Department of Office of Economic and Community Development, OECD. This spreadsheet goes back to 1980 and covers every single town in the state. So call it 169 towns, every single one of them right there on the spreadsheet. So going down by town, going across by time. And what it tells you for each year was the number of building permits that were issued by those towns. If you look at the 80s and 90s, it's big, a lot of activity. But then 2006, boom, right off a cliff, boom, a dramatic decrease in building permits. So it took a while, but eventually, the problems with supply caught up with demand. And then we've seen this rise. But now the real impact we didn't see until I want to say 2019 or thereabouts, because available housing dropped. I should do a study on that too. Available housing in Connecticut went from roughly, I'm going to be roughly 30,000 units per month, believe it or not, down to, wait for it, 3,000 a month. A 90% decline in housing inventory. What do you think that's going to do to housing prices, ladies and gentlemen? It shouldn't be hard to figure out. Anyway, what is it? Yes, no, well, okay. How do I want to put this? The actual financial impact, correct. Okay, 2008. Let me back it up for you a little bit. I'll give you some I'm going to give you some historical perspective here, Kit, and then should help you out. Okay. Believe it or not, or I'm going to set it up this way. The huge impact was early September 2008, when the market in one stroke back then lost 900 points, just like that. Okay? All right, so hold that thought. Now we back up to May. All right. Now, in this time, you did have these rumblings about what was going on with credit worthiness and people, buying houses they really shouldn't be buying. In Europe, okay, in May of 2008, there was a crisis, a mortgage crisis. And oh, by the way, the cause of that mortgage crisis, yeah, we'll get to that too, was where they had to suddenly come up with 500, I hope I have this right, I think 500 billion. I think that's the number. I have to go back and check. This is 2008. It was a huge number, okay, because suddenly people couldn't pay their mortgages. The economy was heading south in Europe in May of 2008 before it hit in America. So let me submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, the possible cause for this problem. That's right, Citibank, JP Morgan. Because what were these guys doing? They were buying up, what were they called? Collateralized debt obligations, so-called, because it was typical for a company to buy up a wad of mortgages. This is what the federal government's doing through Ginnie Mae and Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, okay? Bundles, packages of mortgages. And then they would sell this whole package to a big bank, all right? And the bank would be sitting there saying, well, okay, these mortgages are this, they're going to mature at this rate, the interest rate is this, we should be able to make X on it. And they make an offer, and the bank would say, good, done. Okay, that's fine. I'm pausing for a very good reason. Not as advertised. Not as advertised. If anybody knows anything about mortgages, there was a little something called stripping. Anybody here ever hear of stripping? No, I don't think it was $1 trillion. But it was a big. It was a huge number, and it was, to me, it was alarming. But in America, nobody said anything about it at the time, which is equally. Oh, and by the way, don't forget. So actually, before that happened, in April of 2008, I'm pretty sure, is when Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. Okay. Now, for background, because I knew somebody who worked at Lehman Brothers, a big part of the reason that Lehman Brothers went bankrupt is because they had made a bad bet on mortgages, right? They, in terms of their business model, they were over-investing on mortgages, and they were taking high-risk positions. And enough fell apart in them by that time that they were heading for bankruptcy. So I'm pretty sure that was April of 2008. My research department will have to check on that. Okay, so good night, it's late. Okay, Evil Empire later. So I'm just going to finish up with these other points here. And what's the other thing I wanted to say? All right, so there's that. So the crisis in Europe set the stage for the crisis in September in America. The discussion at the time was about credit default swaps, which is separate from the discussion about these debt obligations with mortgages. All right. So the point being that the first blow, okay, was flushing out all these credit default swaps. Now, they were huge numbers, and people were going, oh my God, these companies are going to go into financial ruin. And there was good reason to believe that, because credit default swaps were, quote, highly leveraged. Some of them would bet like, a modest one. This would not be that big, but they would say, well, we're going to bet that for each dollar we're putting in, that we're going to get $10 back if this trade goes in our direction, which also meant that if the trade went in the other direction, they would have to pay $10. But what they would do is they would have offsetting trades, so all this stuff zeroed out. And that's what happened in early September when the market went down 900 points. All these credit default swap positions zeroed out on each other. All right, so it's kind of like resetting it in that moment, or in mid-September 2008. You could begin to say, this is more like what the real value is with the stock market. But it was just the beginning. Okay, now I'm not sure exactly when this whole thing with TARP started, but the then Treasury Secretary, I can't remember his name, under Bush, was screaming bloody murder and saying, we're about to get into trouble. We need TARP money. Okay. The whole TARP thing. And America was upset because this was an outrageous amount of money on an emergency basis. And the most shameful part of this, ladies and gentlemen, anybody who happened to remember, the phones were not answered, okay? Both the banks and Congress had people literally hiding under the desk, refusing to answer the phones, refusing to answer anybody. Everything went silent. This was their way of handling a crisis. Absolutely shameful. I mean, this would have demanded even greater reform in our government, but it didn't happen. All right. Nonetheless, okay, so that's at the stage. And now, let's see, 2008. Yeah, I think this is about right. Okay, so now the TARP money is spent. It supposedly starts to stabilize things. Later, we find out that he just made the number up out of whole cloth, just like Fauci did with COVID. And somehow we got through it, and here we are. All right. But there's more that can go on here. I am hitting an hour and 20, and I probably think I want to call it a night too, more like a trillion. We will check that. We will check that. I know I've talked about something important here. Let's see. What is the take home message here? We put too much trust in our government officials. That's the bottom line. Too much trust. And there's a need for some kind of government reform. And I have to think about it long and hard. That would say these are the rules for how people who are supposed to be responsible for some of our most powerful institutions. Anyway, I'm calling it a night. So thanks for listening, guys. And let's see, it's Saturday, so I'll be back. Well, this channel, this show Tuesday, but I'll be doing my Monday broadcast. Be reaching out to the same crowd as it is, and hopefully you'll check in. All right. I will look up the Rothschilds' influence in the world. And you have to be, again, objective about it. You have to be willing to think on your own 2 feet when you see this information. All right. Talk about this later.